I think that the key point is to pass through this winter without too many difficulties for European economies and European citizens. That's the key point. The first thing to do is, of course, to reduce our consumption. That's exactly what we are doing currently in France under the leadership of Emmanuel Macron. We really want to reduce the consumption of energy in France. The second point is to diversify the supplies. We want to get rid of supplies coming from Russia because we know that Vladimir Putin is going to cut the gas supply for Europe. So we have to enter into a diversification of suppliers. And the third point, of course, is to reduce the oil and gas revenues for Russia. Because if we want to be efficient in these sanctions, we need to reduce the revenues that Russia is gaining from oil and gas selling.
But if there are already exceptions for countries such as Japan within the G7 statement about limitations for Russian oil revenues and oil prices, how do we expect the G20 to follow suit, given the fact that, of course, the Russians are in G20 themselves?
Well, we are all aware that this is a challenge, but let's have a look at what we already achieved. We kept Europe united in taking sanctions against Russia. We have the G7 being united in the idea of capping the oil price with the view of reducing the oil revenues for Russia. Then there is the question of implementation, which will be quite difficult. You know that you need the unity of all the 27 member states if you want to get the green light for introducing that cap. Second, you need an outreach, because we don't want this measure to be only a Western measure.
Yeah.
It should not be a Western measure against Russia. It should be a global measure against war. And then there is the technical implementation of this measure, how to define the price and this level of price for the capping. These are key challenges, but we are moving on the right direction, opposing this war of Russia against Ukraine, taking strong sanctions and trying to reduce the level of revenues that Vladimir Putin is gaining from the selling of oil and gas.
It's extraordinary. You said to me exactly 1 year ago that it was your deepest political conviction that Europe must become the third geopolitical superpower. We had no idea that there would be the greatest war in Europe when you said that since the Second World War. But in terms of Europe becoming that superpower, the Germans seem to have woken up now. France is still the preeminent power within the European Union, militarily as well. Do you think actually we've made some significant progress to Europe becoming that power and avoiding future threats such as we're seeing now?
I really think that we are moving on the right direction to have Europe playing its part for the 21st century between China and the United States. Let's have a look at the very last decision taken by Chancellor Scholz on defense. The fact that Germany decided to invest 100 billion euros on defense. That's a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Let's have a look on everything that we decided on investments for key technologies and key components. For instance, the chips, the semiconductors. We put several billion euros on the table, France, Germany, Italy, to have new factories producing semiconductors, not in South Korea, in China or in the US, in Europe, in France, in Italy and in Germany. We also took very strong decisions against Russia while adopting those sanctions. So things are radically changing. Europe is becoming a superpower, not only from an economic point of view, but also from a political point of view.